Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm here with one Mr. Jacob Federecci.
I've been on this channel once or twice.
That's good. That's good. Am I on your channel more than you?
No, not more than me, but I have the only regular thing I do right now on my channel is the Tanya.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, I do that regularly every week, but I haven't been. I mean, I'm really happy you're doing the Bible study. I haven't been doing Bible study, and I've been doing various streams at various times. I should be doing more, but I'm like trying to take care of my degrees and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Cassandra. Um, so I should say, out the gate, um, you you kind of said that you wanted to talk to me again to have a conversation. So we're gonna have a conversation. Other people can watch and like by all means join in the comments. But I don't think we're
Did,
gonna bring.
did you watch Pete's video that he just put out?
I haven't seen it yet.
You should watch that video.
I was just like, oh, is this? Are we already going to be talking about this?
Yes, we are. But, well, I mean, like, it's so he it's about Moshiach ben Yosef actually.
Yes. Yeah.
His video, and so the first time I spoke to you was it a 4-hour conversation? It was a very long
I believe
conversation.
4.5. 4.5. Yeah.
Yeah, about Moshiach ben Yosef. And we had a very good conversation. There's a lot of stuff that we haven't really discussed with each other.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most people would suspect that before I give you carte blanche to run a Bible study on my channel, I would have more requirements and like actually agree with you in terms of like our theology and how we view the Bible,
Yeah.
right? Because I mean, so just to put it in Protestant terms, I have no doubt whatsoever that you would be a false teacher, right?
Oh yeah, I saw your conversation yesterday. Yes. Okay.
Well, the conversation yesterday.
No, but there was
Regarding.
conversation. I only saw the beginning of it. Sorry, at the
Okay.
beginning of it, people you're like false. What was the other term they were saying? Degenerate. Degenerate.
Yeah, degenerate was the word that
yeah,
stuck in people's craws.
and you were
Right?
like, no, not degenerate, just a false teacher.
No. Actually, like, yeah, I'm still sticking with the word degenerate. We were talking of Paul of Tarsus, not you.
Yeah.
But so your theology is things I categorically deny, and while I haven't been checking, the only real rule I have is if you're going to discuss the Trinity, at least publish some sort of disavowal that Jacob in no way endorses idolatry and polytheism. And like, I know you're a Trinitarian, so I also know we have a lot of different disagreements about various things, but I mean, it's kind of funny with Pete coming into the discussion. It really feels like he's 4 or 5 years behind the discussion that a lot of us have been having in this little corner or Jordan Peterson sphere, or however you want to talk about it. And so you went on his channel and you were talking about things, and obviously I had my I have I have my criticisms as I do of everything. Um, and so I'm not sure Pete really knows how to engage with my criticisms the way I do. We don't actually we haven't actually been, talking to each other very much.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really necessary for the two of us to have a discussion clarifying, okay, this is what David believes, this is what Jacob believes.
Yeah.
They're very, very different. That in no way, I mean, I don't think there's anything you could possibly say that would make me be like, no, I don't want this guy leading a Bible study on my channel, because as far as I care, it's a matter of competence, and you seem competent to lead a Bible study on my channel, which is like, so there's nothing theologically that you're going to say which is going to make me go, no.
Right.
I can't imagine what you could say that would make me doubt your confidence.
Is it just because we actually go through the text? Like if I started doing sermons instead and drifted entirely and just gave my opinion based on it, would that be something where you're like,
no, because you actually know the Hebrew, and you've looked into the Jewish context, and you I mean,
okay,
I generally trust you to at least. So I have a video, and part of like, so Pete asked me at the end of he said he's interested what my response would be at the end of his video, this most recent video, and I almost gave him a list of my old videos to watch, and I really feel like a lot of this is kind of rehearsing Jacob's greatest hits, but I think it's necessary for the two of us to kind of maybe do some of that. So I have a video, Is It Christian to Lie? And I believe it's a different video, Christian Bibles Lie to You, and where I go through how I'm not just saying this to be provocative. I say it in a provocative manner so people understand what I am saying, because if I were to say it in a less provocative manner, people would not understand what I am saying. Many years ago, I did try to talk to Dr. Bo Branson, but he is also incredibly busy. Back to what we were saying.
The speaking of mistranslations and whatnot.
Yeah,
it's important. It's important at some points that if we represent the other side well, that we understand how something could be interpreted in other ways. And I would agree that there are certain things that, look, we know that this is not the best English translation, and that certain things could be translated in different ways. Is that what you're talking about?
No. So let's go to, for example, Alma Betula in Isaiah 7, or pierced like a lion in Psalm 22.
That one I think is a little bit more complicated because of Dead Sea Scrolls, and we did find there's 8 Masoretic text documents that have that translation.
Okay, we can get. Frankly, we can get into
it. Yeah. No. I do think that's important to say. It is a minority reading of that verse.
Well, okay, no,
it's not a non-existent.
Yeah, I disagree. But let's go through it, right?
Okay.
So I'm guessing while we know what we're talking about, I think the audience won't. Right.
Okay.
So Isaiah 7, Alma Betula, right? So
young woman will be with child.
Young woman versus virgin, as the prophecy that Isaiah gives. I'm forgetting the king's name right now.
Is it Hezekiah?
No, Hezekiah is the baby. Is the virgin birth. It's the king before Hezekiah. Anyway, so there is this scene where Isaiah goes to the king, says, ask for a sign. He says, I will not test God. Ahaz. There, thank you very much, Don. And Isaiah says to him, I will give you a sign,
though you haven't asked for one.
Though you haven't asked for one. Alma, right? Which, frankly, I think anybody who's actually looking at it would say the young woman,
the maiden,
will give birth, right? And then it talks about the child that will be born, right? And in the Septuagint, this is translated as Parthenos, right, which means virgin in Greek. Now, if the text wanted to specify that the young woman was miraculously virgin, which is a whole other thing. Like I don't believe there is any, like, this is a problematic text in many, many ways. But we can argue that stuff. If you were to be the type of person to say, which almost no Christians say anymore. I mean, it was something Christians at one time would say, which is some Christians would say, oh, the actual text originally said, don't
look at the chat. You look at me.
This is how you know that Luke is a Lutheran, despite the fact he pretends to be Eastern Orthodox. This is how you know because he believes that reason is what did Luther call reason?
Probably like a harlot or something.
Yeah, the whore of Satan, I think, something like that.
I believe he referred to what's it called? The Epistle of Jacob, which for some reason is translated as James. It's not. That's not even debated. Like I want a Protestant to actually have the chutzpah just translate it as Jacob. It says Jacob. That Luther referred to James's epistle as an epistle of straw.
Luke is, there you go. He is calling it the morning star. He thinks that reason is of Satan. This is how this person.
You know what? You wanted me to guide the conversation. I see where you're kind of going.
Yeah.
But I want to just hit on one thing. Okay. Yeah. If you want to do a summary of Jacob's greatest hits, we really could sit down and do a Jacob's greatest hits with your pushback, with my pushback, so that Christians could know what some of your pushback would be, which I will pretend to be surprised at, despite being around here for a while. But how about this? How about we get into the question that you kind of opened with me, and is how I titled this stream.
Yeah, we could do that.
Because I think your question is whether or not I think that Gentiles ought to be celebrating Jewish feasts.
Yes.
Would that be correct?
Yes, that is a very.
And why did you? May I ask why you picked specifically? We just spoke very briefly on the phone before a couple weeks ago. You said Sukkot and not Passover.
Right. Because,
can you talk to me about why you did that?
Because obviously Eastern Orthodox Christians and I would say most Catholics would say, and many Protestants would say, that Jesus instituted a Christian celebration of Passover. That's pretty clear that, there is Pascha. And actually, this is the part where Pete quoted Father Stephen from our discussion is Father Stephen, his main attack is, hey, there's a Christian institution of Passover, Pascha, right? And that we as Christians celebrate Passover in this way because it is that which Jesus instituted at the Last Supper, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's
Yeah. Well, I mean, it'll be good if we stick to this conversation because the way that I hope Jacob is still.
I don't know why my camera got unplugged, but hopefully replugging it in will fix that.
That's fine. In the conversation with Father Stephen, responding to my conversation with Pete, he made it seem like that may not be the perspective of the Orthodox Church, because he seemed to be pushing up against the idea that it was Passover, because I was saying that's why I celebrate Passover, because Jesus said that we should, and he didn't take that interpretation. And also, it needs to be noted that the Orthodox Church uses leavened bread, and I don't understand how that works with fulfilling the. So let's just talk us.
Okay.
I get what you.
Or we could clarify. I mean, let's face it, a lot of the people care much more what Father Stephen thinks than what the two of us think. But just to clarify you two to each other, hopefully, in case Father Stephen watches this. Father Stephen imagined that you are like Hebrew roots, which I know that you are not, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so there was a confusion there.
Yes.
I think you may be misunderstanding Father Stephen because of that, but also because Father Stephen would say, right, that, okay, for a Gentile to have a connection with Passover, what they need to do is connect to the Christian tradition of Passover as it has been handed down, as opposed to going to the Jews and seeing, hey, what's in your Haggadah, right? And obviously, Father Stephen doesn't have a Haggadah, right? And I mean, this is part of my disagreement with him, and actually agreement with you, which is, I'm like, hold on, Jews have a Haggadah. Where do you think like this Haggadah came from? There must have been the corollaries in when Jesus had the Last Supper, right, as a Seder.
Yes.
And so the fact that Christianity has lost it, and obviously he doesn't agree with you on this, it would be evidence that the Christian church at some point has lost the way. And I mean, you are taking it from a Protestant view, but this is particularly why I thought it's too complicated to talk about Passover. We can start with the Feast of Booths.
Yeah. So my perspective would be that, first off, I certainly entered this through Passover, so I think that's important. Would you agree that whatever the Last Supper is seems to be some kind of relationship to Passover intentionally?
I mean, yeah, very much so. And,
okay.
And I'm not sure I told you about my thing with. I did tell you about my thing with Mashiach ben Yosef and the wine that spilled out of the second cup.
Yes. Yeah. Is that the bit where you flick the flick, 10 droplets? Yeah.
Spill wine.
Yeah. Which I also, I think that's also it being the cup of wrath. For those who don't know, 4 cups in Passover, wrath is the second cup.
Wrath.
Sanctification. Wrath. Wait.
No. 4 cups. Now you're going to make me look up.
It can be trained. Okay.
On
Passover.
The bit where you're remembering the plagues.
No, it's you remember the plagues, but it's I thought it's Geula. I thought it's redemption.
No,
Passover.
that's number 3. It's number 3, which is served after the meal.
Shvoch Hamatcha is sanctification, deliverance, redemption, and praise. This is all Christian stuff. Where?
I'm so sorry.
Symbolism of 4 cups.
Where is it? Okay.
Passover.
I'm pulling it up too.
The 4 cups. Wine. Oh, this is from. Oh yeah, keto. Reclining. Okay, it would take me too long, but like Shvoch Hamatcha is actually so. Let's move on from there because
Okay. Anyway, yeah. Okay, so you are cool with that, at least part of that, and I would also say, as I study it more, the introduction of the Passover meal, the beginning with the parsley being dipped in some traditions in a wine vinegar and sometimes in salt water because of freaking blood libel. I read some stuff about that they're just like, hey, why did the European Jews stop dipping it into
wine vinegar?
Yeah. And one of the main theories is because there was stories of the blood libel, right? Yes, Caspian is a guy I know. Yes.
And Caspian should go watch the 4.5 hour discussion we had about Moshe and Yosef.
But so the beginning of Passover is a reminder of Joseph. So you remember when you're dipping that because the garment is linen. For whatever reason, the parsley is to remind you of the dipping of Joseph's coat in the blood, because that's how we get to Egypt.
You're going into all kinds of symbolic stuff that I'm sure there are midrashim, and we could discuss that stuff.
Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, yeah. You're right. Okay, so basically, the idea that I've had, and the deeper I go, the more it seems correct, is that many of these traditions, it seems rather unlikely that they are not. There's certain stuff there's certain things in the Jewish traditions that I think are older than 2,000 years old. There are things that I believe are later.
Okay.
There are legends and interpretations that become much more popular later on. And I would even say, and this is probably something that we differ at, I think that there's multiple views of the Godhead before Kabbalah and Lurianic Kabbalah becomes a lot more where if people are trying to understand that. But I do think that there's something very deep that needs to be understood, which the church loses. It does not understand. And that if you start understanding these things and you start looking at the text, it becomes almost impossible for me it would be very difficult to convince me that the church does not continue celebrating Passover and continued celebrating other biblical feasts.
Other biblical feasts
as well. Because we have references, for instance, of Paul making sure that he makes pilgrimage for Pentecost. Now, all the Christians are going to say, yeah, because of Pentecost. But I would say that, again, Christians don't realize that Pentecost is actually the Feast of Weeks.
I think a lot of Christians would say, especially the Paul within Judaism Christians would say, that, well, Paul was Jewish and there was a temple at the time. And so Paul, having observed, everything oftentimes does boil down to Acts 21. what do you believe is happening in Acts 21? Is when Paul goes to Jerusalem, he's greeted by James and the other leaders of the community, and they say to him, hey, look, everybody here is zealous for the law. All these Christians who believe, right?
Mhm.
And what people have heard is that you preach against the temple and the law. And to prove that this is not the case, they had 4 Nazarites, was it?
Yeah, a group of men. I can't remember how many, but a group of them all take on a Nazarite vow, and that they make sacrifice at the temple. They
Make sacrifice, bring a sin sacrifice at the temple, I have to say. And Paul is to join with them, and I don't believe the rest of the story in Acts is in any way accurate, so we won't go there. But
Fine.
the question becomes, when Paul decides to go along, and what is Paul doing? Is he agreeing that anybody who interprets him as speaking against the temple and the sacrifices and the continued observance of the Mosaic law, certainly by Jewish Christians, and to some extent by non Jewish Christians, is what was Paul saying? What was James saying? What is the result? How do you interpret that scene? And there are many ways that various Christians interpret that scene. My question is, how do you interpret that scene?
Yeah, you know the story from Zechariah where it speaks of 10 goys grabbing on to a Jew and saying, please show us your God. or
let us go with you. Yes.
Let us go with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that Zechariah speaks of that as part of the Messianic age. And that I believed that the early Christian church believed that this was being fulfilled. And that is why the goys are all coming. And that if you went to a early Christian church, what you would have been hearing is the reading of Torah.
5 books of Moses. Yeah.
That's right.
Acts 15. Yeah.
That's what you would have been participating in. That's what you would have been studying. You would have been, I believe you would have been using the letters of Paul, like Midrash, or like rabbinic interpretation. But that and so I think that as the church expands, that part of, this is something I've been thinking about, like Jacob, you are very defensive about your traditions in a good way. And what I mean is, on one of the first conversations we had, we began it because I said something incorrect about Passover, and you corrected me on it.
Okay.
Because you are jealous for the traditions in like a protective, good way. Okay. And I think that is like, the Christians always interpret that we make the Jews jealous because we have correct interpretation. What if we're actually making them jealous because we're becoming so excited about Deuteronomy? But
you say so many things. Just to clarify for Garth and Yon God, the booths we're talking about is the Festival of Booths, Sukkot. Yeah. Yeah. Which they seem to have misunderstood.
I really like this though. I guess the problem here is that David is culturally appropriating Jacob's culture, and that's not very woke. Fun times. Thanks, Yanni.
Well, yes, we're very glad that you're not woke. There was something I was gonna say. So Paul, so I mean, without getting into an argument over what is the correct interpretation,
Yeah.
but you would not interpret Paul as saying that a Jew who becomes who believes in Christianity should stop circumcising their children.
No.
That they should stop keeping kosher. That
No.
well,
this
that's
where it
probably-
becomes complicated, honestly, Jacob, is I would see the bigger problem being
Mhm.
that as Christians who are Gentiles and are not bound by the law,
Mhm.
as they look into the law and see it for its true beauty, they're going to start saying, you know what? Maybe some of the dietary laws are for our good.
Mhm.
Maybe we shouldn't touch dead bodies. Maybe, right? Like the Black Death was blamed on Jews because, like, one of the theories is if you take, part of my family's Irish, what they used to do when someone died is they put them on the dining room table, and people would go and all hang out in that room where the dead body was. Gee, I wonder why the plague spread so quickly among the Gentiles. Gee, I wonder, right? But are we bound to do these things? Do we have to? Well, like, look, there's certain things about what is being gotten at in the New Testament that I did not understand without practicing the feasts for 20 years.
Mhm.
And like, I don't think that Gentiles have to fast on Yom Kippur.
Mhm.
But there's only so much you can understand without participating.
Mhm.
And
Young God says things get so technical, but the fact is when you talk about the details is when it becomes very clear what the implications of your theology is.
right. And I would very much agree with you, especially now that Christians seem to want to make things as easy as possible. And as I was becoming a Christian, I think because I was Catholic, like I grew up very, very Catholic, like monastic movements, I was like, yeah, I'm down for this. I'm absolutely down for it. Whereas for a lot of Protestants, even the notion of fasting is like it's like, what are you trying to prove? Right. And honestly, there's only so much about atonement that you're going to understand without afflicting yourself. And there are things within the traditions and trying to be respectful and all these things. And I think Christians will make mistakes, but Zechariah, like the passage that you've talked to about how it sometimes feels with all these Christians coming up to you and being like, tell me more, right?
Yeah.
Where does that go in that book? In Zechariah, the place where it goes is that everyone looks towards God, and depending on how you translate that verse, possibly onto him whom they've pierced, and that they are afflicting
A
themselves.
verse in Zechariah?
Yeah.
Okay, I have to see what Hebrew you're trying to understand and how you're getting.
It will be
Which verse?
translated as two different individuals. There isn't a vav in between the two.
I don't even know the text here. Which chapter in Zechariah are we talking about? 14 was it?
Was it? It might be. Just double check. No, not 14.
One thing dealing with all these Christians has done is make me know Nach the way no Yeshiva Bacher does.
12. Zechariah 12. And this is important too, because I was looking at this as well. I like in the Hebrew, and that you could translate it It seems like I think it feels like it's male personal, male singular.
No, that's the thing. It's actually plural. I mean, at least the one that I'm thinking of.
Well, that's Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53.
No.
Okay.
Where is it? That
Verse 10.
On that day, verse 10?
Yeah.
No, I was thinking of the verse. You're thinking of this verse. I was thinking of the verse. Okay. ושפכת על בית דוד ועל יושב ירושלים רוח חן ותחנונים והביטו עלי את אשר דקרו וספדו עליו כמספד על היחיד והמר עליו כהמר על הבכור. So, this is gonna get complicated. Okay. Right. So if you're talking about the Mashiach ben Yosef. Okay.
Yes, which in Hebrew it'll oftentimes will interject, like in
right.
I think the translation I found in Safaria was thrust through, like not the word pierced. So if you're looking at it,
I mean that's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. It's used elsewhere to mean pierced or doesn't matter.
I mean the
Christians
point,
like pierced because it sounds like the hands. That's what they like.
The point here, I mean, for me has always been, okay, so there's going to be the grieving of Mashiach ben Yosef when Mashiach ben David comes, which for me makes it so clear that we're talking about two different people.
Okay. So the place where I wanted to go, just so we get it out of the way, I think.
Okay.
So there I would line up with everyone mourning.
Yeah.
That this, like, I see this as a kind of a cosmic Yom Kippur.
Okay.
And that the direction it would be going in. Can I present? Is that okay?
Yeah. It's your show. Here, let me make that clear. It's your show.
Oh wow! Oh, I'm so honored.
You can be the. Yeah.
Okay. So, behold, the day is coming for the Lord when the spoil taken from you will be divided in your midst. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the house plundered, and the women raped. Blah blah blah. It's terrible. Half the city.
This is the end of Malachi, or
Zechariah.
This is Zechariah 14. Okay.
So it's going bad. On that day, his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives that lies before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west by a very wide valley, so that one half of the mount shall move northward and the other half southward. Okay, so this is a very apocalyptic image.
Right.
Shall flee from the valley, blah, blah, blah. Okay, on that day there shall be no light, cold, or frost. There shall be a unique day which is known to Hashem, neither day nor night, but in evening shall be light. Okay. On that day, living waters shall flow out from Jerusalem, half of them to the eastern sea and half of them to the western sea. It shall continue in summer as in winter. And the Lord will be king over all the earth. And on that day, the Lord will be one and his name will be one. Hey, look, Jacob, you love this verse.
We say this verse at the end of each prayer service. Yeah.
Yes, you love a lot of the passages in Zechariah.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
That's not surprising. Yes.
Yes.
What does that have to do with what we were talking about?
Okay. So then it's like Jerusalem is this holy city, basically like resurrection. And those who are outside of it, their flesh will rot. They will be standing on their feet. Their eyes will rot in their sockets. Okay, that's great. Okay. Where is it? Okay, Here we are. Then everyone who survives of all the nations that have come against Jerusalem shall go up year after year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Booths.
I see. Okay.
And in any of their families of the earth who do not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, there will be no rain on them.
Okay. So my question for you. First, I am assuming you're not a preterist who believes this stuff happened in the year 70.
No. Well,
Good.
I think there's dynamics in which that some of this stuff kind of happened, because there is without a doubt, you know this as well, that within in Jewish understanding of prophecy, that there are prophecies which can change, which a lot of Christians are very uncomfortable with.
Right. So we believe that prophecies for evil of apocalyptic, like bad things, do not need to be fulfilled at all.
Yeah. I'm sorry. This is so good. So the technical problem is that in theory, every passage has a midrash about it, and David needs to deal with the passage and the midrash and Jacob's opinion at the same time.
I have no idea what he's saying. We're trying to clarify how David sees the Bible versus how I see the Bible.
Yes.
So that when people listen to one or the other, they understand what we are. The main reason I definitely wanted us to clarify this is people see David on my channel. I think it is only fair that you would assume that if David is teaching Bible studies on my channel, we theologically agree somewhat.
Yeah, not only that, you don't even entirely know what I even believe.
I don't know what you believe. And, like, I'm not doing this in order to be like, well, will I let him be?
No. There's conversations that we've had that are fruitful.
I'm clean. Yeah, and interesting. But I also I think it is necessary that we clarify what our differences are in how we view. And so that's why I want to know. And it is interesting that this is how you're viewing, for example, the fulfillment of Zechariah. So do you believe that, okay, Christians will be observing the Festival of Booths when Jesus comes back?
Yeah, it says it. It says it in the Greek. It is not translated into English, but it says that he's coming to tabernacle with his people.
Okay. So do you believe that Christians should do that right now?
I think, first off, if they are a Jewish Christian, then absolutely.
What define Jewish Christian? How do you get to be a Jewish Christian?
I have to define what a Jew is? I hate that question.
It is a very difficult question that we Jews have difficulty with. And
I've never had to deal with it. Like, look, a lot of these issues are very personal to me. This one is not. I'm European, so there wasn't even a pretending to be, as Dr. Kellogg's made it.
Hey, Chad, don't mean to be ignoring you, but yes, I was at a different weekend, and I have heard there is something going on in Chicago in 2025, which Chicago, as long as it's run by my good friend Sam Titteman, I will be more than glad to attend.
I think I'll be attending that one too. That's close enough.
Not so far from Toronto.
No.
Yeah, I don't know what the dates are. I don't know my schedule for 2025.
It's in August. I have it already marked. Okay, let's.
They've announced it to you and not me. What?
No, Chad released it on. He made like a trailer. I saw it and double checked.
August 22nd through the 24th.
it's possible I might be able to make it if I have graduated by then. August 22nd through the 24th. Okay, I am going to put this on my calendar. Chicago Fast. Okay.
Maybe instead of tents, we should do it in booths.
Okay.
So this is where I come in. Okay, I don't know what a Jew is, and I don't want to be distracted by that.
It's not a distraction, though. It is a detail that I think clarifies.
Yeah.
I don't know why my. Oh, I know why. My cat's been playing with my. That's why. Hopefully, this will fix it. There we go. And yeah, I think my cat pulled a cable. Okay. So
I don't know what a Jew is. If it because
see, this is, and I'll explain why I'm asking. Right. So if you ask, well, the Jewish community says they're Jewish, right? Then that's a whole different way of establishing what is true and biblical than yeah, it's like that's what is your hermeneutic? Like, what process do you run a house church, right?
Yeah.
And let's say, God forbid, a Jew comes and joins your church, and you baptize him, right, in the name of the all three of your gods.
One God.
Yeah.
It's only one name. It's in the name, not in the names.
Yeah. And then, so do you say, hey, you really should stop eating pork? Do you do that?
I you know what? Like the difficulty for me is not saying that I would give that advice to a Jew. It's that I think it's too difficult for the Gentiles to do it, but that I want them to do it for a bit. I now eat pork, but I ate biblically kosher for I think a decade, for like 10 years, where there were certain places where I would make exception because I would think that there were more important things than whether or not I thought that this was right for me.
Yeah.
But such politeness I wouldn't engage in on Yom Kippur.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. When it comes down to actual practicalities, you end up having to choose priorities and have a particular hermeneutic, right? Which ultimately, I mean, I think so. Here, maybe I should. I was wondering if I should do this or not, but Pete's video, I left some spicy comments on. Let me pull up my spicy comment. Okay, so this is Pete's video. I actually do recommend reading it. My first spicy comment: allow me to tell you one of my favorite jokes. Why did God create
Mormons? I told my Mormon friend this. She thought it was very funny. Former Mormon.
So Christians understand how Jews feel. And Pete, actually, I hadn't seen. He says the irony would be if the Mormons got it right. That would be ironic. Then my next, my response to what he was saying was, my response is that I think it would be beneficial for you to try to not be so Protestant in the most pejorative way that we use that term in this corner, meaning someone who destroys everything his family has amassed over thousands of years as an inheritance so he can claim to be a self-made man. Even if you were capable of reconstituting the fortune that you destroyed all by yourself, you merely climbed out of a pit of your own creation. This discussion is thousands of years old. Protestants do not approach this conversation on equal footing because the people who have not forgotten the tradition, capital T tradition, stand on the shoulder of giants. Try climbing on the shoulders of subgiants. The reformers were hardly that, much the opposite. And I mean, this is part of my frustration talking with Protestants is I feel like you find yourself in a
it's your feelings about propaganda. It's I think for yourself.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's think for yourself. It's your problem with think for yourself. You can't do it. Okay, who gave you this Bible? Like, because the person did an Ethiopian give you the Bible? Because then you got different books.
You're right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, when we get into this discussion, right? Yeah, you're a Protestant. God have mercy on your soul.
You're a Jew. God have mercy on yours.
Amen.
Amen. I don't know if I put it in, but I almost titled this "Wrestling with Jacob," and I, as I was thinking about that, it's just like, all right, so at the end, whoever loses has to bless the other one. Wait, but that makes whoever lost God. So I don't. Where does this metaphor break apart? Maybe in our humanity.
Well, we would actually probably say that's a lowercase g God there. Yeah, but that's a whole other thing. I have no idea what Jan God is saying.
It's fine. Don't be distracted by the people.
So you are in a position where you're trying to figure all of this out for yourself.
Yeah. And look, I'll tell you straight up. Okay. I'll give an example of something, and I don't know how you'll feel about this. And maybe this will be a good place of conversation. Because of the stuff about Passover related to Jesus, at least once, I helped Michael Sartori celebrate Passover with his family, which, as best as I know, his Jewish wife.
And all three of his daughters are Jewish. Yes.
Yeah. So her and her shiksa husband.
Shagets. The masculine is Shagets. Yeah.
But either way, I think I said that at some point at the Bible study. I'm like, I'm surrounded by shiksas because Sandy was there and so was Michael. And
okay.
But either way, that was that there might be anything to learn from it was enough for them to celebrate it. Now, I don't know how you feel about that. Because I think if they heard from you,
well, I have been encouraging Michael because as far as we've been able to determine, his wife is halakhically Jewish. That's not perfectly clear, but I have no reason to doubt what she said. And if she is halakhically Jewish, then their three daughters are Jewish, and as far as I am concerned, I don't really care if they think they're Christians, right? I think it's a good thing for them to observe the Passover, right?
Let me ask you this question related to it. Michael Brown, the Christian pastor, apologist, whatever,
Who is halakhically Jewish? Yes.
who is halakhically Jewish, was raised like he wasn't
He was raised in a normal.
yeah, but he wasn't
Reformed
living an
Jewish-
Orthodox life.
Yeah,
he was doing heroin
Yeah.
and all
Right.
this stuff when he became a Christian.
Yes.
If he's participating in Passover now,
Yes.
honoring Jesus as the Passover lamb and as the bread connected to the lamb connected to the firstborn, all of this stuff sees him as Messiah and believes that that's what he's celebrating. Like, would you see that? I don't know what I should say. Like,
So
as better than if he was not celebrating anything, or what do you think?
Right. Yeah. And I have actually said this many times when it comes to somebody like Andrew Clavin, right? Or David Brooks, or
right, that they're more Jews now that they became Christians and left Reform.
Yeah, I believe a conversion from Reform Judaism to any form of Protestant Christianity is a move up, right?
Right.
Because at least you believe in God. I'm sure many Reform Jews would find that abhorrent and offensive, and that's their problem. No, I would say it's the same thing. I mean, I would say I would prefer somebody believe in Islam than reform Judaism, right? And I don't actually care if Michael Brown thinks of himself as a Jew or a Gentile. I care whether halachically, according to Jewish law, he has that status of being a Jew or Gentile, because I believe there is a qualitative difference between a Jewish soul and a Gentile soul, which people may find offensive. That's their problem, not mine.
But
right?
so
I believe that's what Judaism teaches.
Yeah, this kicks around a whole bunch. So this exists in some rabbinic movements, but then leads to some weirdness in Christianity, which is the belief that because the Jews get taken into exile and that we lose them in the nations,
right? So
part of the calling back of the nations is actually, like, I do think that's part of what's going on with Ruth, the Moabite, becoming Ruth in the book of Ruth, being brought back into the story. The idea is that there's something about her being the daughter of Lot and not wanting to lose her for that reason. That there's a calling back of the
family of Abraham.
Yes. Yeah. And so that the nations that become lost, that become mixed, that's part of, like, God even says this, I'm going to use this as an excuse.
Yeah,
your
there
disobedience.
Is a certain sort of redemption that
that's right.
Yeah, I mean, many Christians have this idea, and I actually believe Father Stephen interprets Romans 10 that way.
Yeah.
His understanding of the branches that were cut out is Israel, not like first temple Israel, not second temple Israel.
Yeah.
Which for a lot of Christians would be a shocking reinterpretation of Romans 10.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't see that as a contradictory, though. As the idea of, like, no, we're bringing, because I think it's implied in the way that in 1 Corinthians, where it says Christ, our Passover lamb, was sacrificed. Therefore, let us keep the feast not with the old leaven, the leaven of malice and wickedness, but of the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. I think I quoted that correctly, is that Paul is writing that to, I think, a majority formerly pagan church. So I think as they are moving away, that they are starting, like that again, they're meeting, they're understanding Christ as the Passover lamb, which means these were Christians who understood their Old Testament a lot better than Christians do now, right? That they were poring over these stories, and that they were, and if, you know, from a lot of these places, these are people who may have been pulled out from, like, taken off into exile. And I had heard from certain Messianic people that, oh yeah, if you were completely Gentile and you were super interested in Messianic Christianity, the reason why is you don't know that you have a Jewish grandmother, right? Is that you have a Jewish soul and you don't even know it. Is that...
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, the thing with the Hebrew roots movement and this Messianic movement, and I mean, I guess probably what we should ask is why you decided to leave the Messianic movement.
Why did I?
Yeah.
Well, first off, they don't exist in a lot of places. I'm not a Hebrew roots person where I think that everyone must practice exactly.
Yeah, let's distinguish between Messianic and Hebrew roots, and actually, probably we should distinguish between dual covenant and bi-covenant and single covenant Messianics as well.
Okay.
But, yeah, go ahead.
So part of the reason why, and I know this came up with your conversation with Father Stephen, is he said it's kind of, isn't that redundant to call yourself a Messianic Christian?
Yes.
Isn't that
you're
what other kind is there?
A Christian or a Messianic Messianic?
Yes, but you particularly,
those words are synonyms.
Yes, yeah. But I feel that you have used that term in the past because you're also like,
well, that's what they call themselves. I call Messianic.
Yeah. No. But you'll also say Christians should spend more time thinking about the Messiah. I've heard you say.
I constantly tell Christians that I wish they were Messianic. Yes.
Yeah. So the group that I first was introduced to Messianic Christianity through was not, basically had no Jewish members. They were Gentiles that started coming across the material because of the internet and started saying, okay, we're going to meet on Saturday and we're going to study Torah and we're going to do all this stuff.
Right.
So they didn't call themselves Messianic Jews. They called themselves Messianic Israelites because they believed that they had been grafted into the tree of Israel. Right. And I would understand myself that way as well. That I believe that there is a way which I am partaking of the blessing which God gave to Israel.
Okay.
That it comes through Israel, that blessing.
Okay.
Right. And that the first covenant was not a failure. And it wasn't fulfilled in such a way, meaning that it had no power. But my belief is that the first covenant was given and the feasts were given to understand what God is like and what our relationship is like to him.
Okay.
And Israel was bound to celebrate those feasts in order to remember what God did.
Okay.
And that Gentiles, but this was not merely how God rescued people out of Egypt, that this was the image of what our relationship with God looks like.
Okay.
And so a similar thing that occurs among Christians who would call themselves some form of Messianic is the belief that Christ fulfilled the fall feasts in his first coming and will fulfill the spring feasts in his first coming and will fulfill the fall feast in his second coming. Okay, that is something I believe that's the bit about the trumpets, that may you be sealed in the book of life, that's what's going on in the book of Revelation.
We're saying Passover and Pentecost were fulfilled and
Yes.
Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, not yet.
Yes, yeah, but there's still it almost, I think, is in thirds, not in halves. So I think that there still is more to be fulfilled in Passover.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly the language that's in Revelation. That all of the plagues in Revelation are lined up as though they're the plagues in Egypt. Yeah, and so, but the ultimate fulfillment, because it's one event that inspires all of the feasts, right?
Okay.
So them in the wilderness, which they only get there through the Passover, is why God's in a booth in the first place, well, in a tabernacle, and the celebrating of when we were traveling in booths with God in the wilderness.
Okay.
Right? So there's certain elements of that which cannot be understood apart from celebration. And through that, we are understanding our relationship with God.
Okay. Why did you leave the Messianic movement?
Okay, so number one, I don't live in Toronto anymore. If I lived in Toronto, there'd be plenty of options. Number two, this is an interesting question, Jacob, because no one's actually asked me this. I became a part of churches based on communities that I thought were healthy and where I felt called. And as a result of that, I believed that. So one of the things to note is that the Jewish feasts are like Passover is led by the father, not by the rabbi. I think this is one of the things that I put into people's minds about the feasts is how much you need to be in synagogue within Jewish belief system. Because I think for Christians, they would be very surprised to learn that, like if you're an Orthodox or Catholic, then who can give you communion? Oh, you're
sorry. I muted myself to type.
And I'm not against authority. Yeah. I'm pro authority, but
no. I mean, I get it, and that's beautiful, because I agree with you that the way we're doing it is right. I'm guessing Father Stephen's trans Jews state is more along the lines of he would be like, okay, well, how do you know, right, that this is the right way of doing it? You're going to the Jewish community as it exists today, whereas an Orthodox Christian, right, has the testimony of Christianity for the past 2,000 years that the apostles taught that, okay, this is how we do it with presbyters, etc. Right?
I would say that, so this is the problem, is that I believe Christianity to be true. I believe that the risen Christ is beckoning people to follow after the God of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing, turning from sin, turning towards God, in a way that the Gentiles never came to the God of Israel before.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But that being said, so obviously I have huge respect for Judaism, but I think that it's not too difficult. I don't want to get into the weeds to show that the 10 Sophirot is a development, that it didn't exist in the time of Jesus.
I would be very curious how I mean, we can get into the meat.
Yeah. I don't think that's it's something I would need to get into again, because I haven't gone deep into that material in a bit. But like, there's some bits of material that I go, that seems like it might be later.
Okay, but that puts you as the individual authority.
I know, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it, and I feel comfortable putting myself under authority of people and saying whatever my disagreement is. I think that I should be a person under authority and should not seek for myself to be pope.
Okay. So how first of all, how do you establish that authority, and who's your authority? Because I mean, I think I have made perfectly clear, Rabbi Wagner, who I've had on here, who's originally from Toronto, right? I have asked him about my channel several times, and while I fail to do everything he recommends I do, I do acknowledge his authority. I have consulted with Rabbi Breitowitz. I've consulted with other rabbis, and even on my channel, right? We have Chezi and Yosef, right? So there are three people. Rabbi with no knife doesn't get involved very much, but we have. I have always said I belong to the Orthodox Jewish community, and I believe in the authority of the Orthodox Jewish community, despite not being a very good Orthodox Jew myself, right? And that's always been very important to me. I guess I always assumed you were a typical Protestant, which I have to say I'm kind of dismissive of, because I view a Protestant as a sheep without a shepherd.
What about those who are under the authority of pastors?
The thing is, it's like you're that one pastor. I mean, I have a series. I think it went up to number 3, maybe 4, of why is Protestant theology so bad? And the presumption there is Protestant theology is bad. And the answer I give, and I demonstrate with the examples I give, is because anytime you're standing on your own shoulders as opposed to the shoulders of giants, you're going alone, you're thinking for yourself, right? You're going to end up with a worse answer than at least tell me you're standing on the shoulders of John Calvin. I'm no fan of John Calvin, right? Yeah. But at least you're telling me, okay, we have this Reformed tradition, we have these confessions, we have, right? But when you're an absolute Protestant, a truly sola scriptura Protestant, then I just believe you're free floating. And you might be Mike Winger, right? Who's a really smart guy, but you're still free floating.
Yeah, I get that. But I think we are in exile. I think we are, this is a problem, and I understand wanting that not to be, how do I say this? I understand the desire for that not to be the case, for us not to be in exile. And I understand, look, there's some Zionist movements who as well believe we're back in the land and all this other stuff.
Yeah, I disavow all things.
But that's what I mean, though,
themselves
Jacob. Is that to what extent was there a better system of authority within Judaism when there actually was a priesthood that had to be determined and all these things?
So I mean, now we're getting into the witness of the remnant of Israel.
And I look, I accept this, and well, not I accept it, but look, I think that there's good reason to believe that there still is, when the Talmud is written down, a memory of some of the practices of exactly how the temple was used. No, not exactly how the temple was used.
Okay.
But it seems to me that there's some. Thank you, Jason. I assume we both get a kiss and a hug, and not that he kisses one of us twice and hugs the other twice.
Yeah. I just want to know why my stupid camera keeps on going off. Yeah. You were saying.
Yeah, is that
you work on that. I'm going to work on this camera.
Yeah, no problem. I can wait a second. That's also
no. I'm listening.
Okay. Israel has lost 10 tribes.
Okay.
The notion that the nation would get things wrong or lose, like that the majority would not accept their Messiah, I don't think is contrary to how the Bible portrays the nation of Israel.
It's contrary to how it portrays the Messiah.
So, well, first off, you mean, but not.
I mean, Mashiach ben David, obviously, yeah,
but not Ben Yosef.
I mean, that's the role of Mashiach ben Yosef is not a role of leadership.
Okay. Where do I go with this? I think that even if you just take the acceptance of the prophets or things like that, the falling away is absolutely crucial. And
yes, people fall away, but if Israel ceases, and I mean, this gets into the question of supersessionism, and like, so I believe that a generational transmission from Sinai, right, as a witness to the entire world, right? And let's face it, a majority of Jews, including myself today, do not live an Orthodox Jewish lifestyle in any way, right? And but for me, frankly, the witness of Israel, and I say this, I never claim to a Christian, I am a Jew, because I know you guys have this thing of those who claim to be Jews but are not, right? In Revelation, I will identify as long as it's not an actual point of discussion, but I will never make that claim, because I will not say to you, hey, here, I prove to you that I am a Jew. The fact is, Christians tell me that I'm a Jew, right? It is the witness of history. And I mean, if you want my DNA, I'm pretty open with my DNA. My DNA is definitely the DNA of people who have been living in the Levant for a very long time, right? And that's part of the reason why I do ask Christians, okay, what's your definition of a real Jew?
Right.
Right? Like, if we're going to distinguish between Jew and Gentile, which a lot of Christians categorically reject that distinction, right? And frankly, I think the only reason we have the whole transgender debate, this is me turning things theologically on their heads, because I think theologically. I believe the entire transgender debate exists because of that line in Galatians. There is no Jew or Greek, bond or free, male or female in Christ Jesus. I think we're having the transgender
I
debate.
utterly disagree with that, because it's not the Christians who believed in that pushed that kind of idea.
You're misunderstanding the causation I'm trying to say. I'm saying the reason God created this debate is to ingrain in the Christian mind that you cannot believe that that's the meaning of Galatians. If you have to understand that Jew and Greek are the same before God, in the same way as male and female are. Like, I think that verse glues the two things together so that Christians cannot say, but they have said for thousands of years, that now that the veil has been ripped, right? There is no distinction between Jew and Greek. And there is a distinction, but I don't think most Christians really realize what that distinction is. And I think the reason historically there has always been a Jewish people as a witness, it is as a witness of what is true. And I would say in contrast to Christianity, which is false.
I would say in relationship to that if you consider Galatians to be entirely Gentile, they're all Gentiles who are, I think how Father Stephen was classifying me would be correct of the Galatians, that they were not considering themselves to be Gentiles who have been called by Israel's Messiah, and through that are giving up their pagan lives to worship the God of Israel, to throw away idolatry and only follow one God, to no longer think it's okay to abuse their servants or any of these things. Like that, it's a real transformation which occurs.
Okay.
But that the people that he is writing to in that situation are people. Look, I've also heard you talk about, if you had the option, you wouldn't be born a Jew.
I have said that, yeah.
Yeah, you that like it.
If as a Gentile, I could live as a Gentile, an observant lifestyle in ways that I don't see myself living as an observant Jew right now.
Right.
And because of that, I would rather be an observant Gentile than be a non-observant Jew. Yes.
Yes. And I think that in some of the way that Paul is engaging with people who are becoming Judaizers, would be the term that I think Christians would use to describe that, is he is describing, I don't think that Paul is against the law. Paul within Judaism is more of the perspective that I would take. But so I think what he is conveying to these Gentiles is what you are conveying about what that experience is like.
Right.
And telling them, like, there's a freedom which they have, which they're not engaging with correctly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you are espousing Paul within Judaism, which is Father Stephen's view.
Yes.
The main difference between your view and Father Stephen's view is Father Stephen believes that there was a full deposit that has been retained by the church for thousands of years. You don't believe the church retained that deposit. You don't believe the Jewish community fully retained the deposit.
No.
And you are trying by yourself to reconstruct what it should be.
What's the name of the guy where his family, he like makes the decision, you know what? He just says for his family, we're all going to start speaking Hebrew now. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
So if I understand the history of modern Hebrew, is some guy just made the decision, you know what? We're all speaking Hebrew now. All of us. He was like, because Hebrew it was still used within synagogue, though some of the prayers are in Aramaic and all this other. He makes the decision, we're bringing back Hebrew as a language.
Eliezer Ben Yehuda?
Is that, I can't remember who it is.
He is the person who sat down and made a Hebrew, a modern Hebrew dictionary and basically invented modern Hebrew. Yeah.
Yeah. And that in some cases, he's like, you know what? This is what I don't care. This is going to be the word for automobile or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he did that. Yes. And I mean, yeah, if you think you are that guy.
Yeah, I don't think the church is in the promised land. I don't think Israel's in the promised land. I think everyone is in exile. And that we're trying to get back to what the traditions are. I think, because like, look, what did, I've never talked to an actual Orthodox Jew about this. What was learned, like what was lost when Josiah finds the book of the law in the back?
Good question.
Is everything preserved?
So
is nothing lost and nothing changed, nothing altered?
The traditional interpretation, I believe, Rashi gives. So there's a parallel passage in Chronicles, right? And that one actually says that it was a handwritten scroll that was found. And so the traditional interpretation is that it was because they found the scroll that Moses himself had written. Not that they didn't have Torah scrolls. They had Torah scrolls. Mm-hmm. But they found the actual scroll that Moses himself had written. And that was a revelation for them. What exactly was lost?
You see what I mean, though. If you have the text,
yeah,
and you're looking at the text, it seems like things could have been lost.
So we have this concept, especially regarding the Kativ and the Kri, right? That there are things in the Kri, in the Kativ, in the way it is itself written, that we just can't understand. We don't know right now.
Right.
The Tetragrammaton, right? The pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton there are things which have, in fact, which are forgotten today, right? And that's partially why we look forward to Elijah coming, because Elijah is alive, right? He comes all the way from the time before any of this was forgotten, right? But we have an assurance that the Torah will not be lost, right?
I've wondered your opinion on this because when what's his name, when Moses Maimonides is speaking about the Christians versus the Jews, which you've talked about.
Nachmanides, you mean?
Is it Nachmanides? The
Maimonides wrote wrote in the Mishnah Torah about Jesus.
No. I'm
dispute.
I'm talking about the idea that the Christians and the Muslims, they're heretics, but they're spreading knowledge of the God of Israel. So God is going to use this for good. What's interesting within there is that he specifies, though, that you can't talk. So he says the Christians are worse because they're heretics, but you can talk to them because they still have the Torah. that's part of it. Is that but the Muslims they're not tritheists, but they don't have Deuteronomy. Like you can't talk.
Okay.
How do you have a conversation about this?
Okay, so there are letters of Maimonides which are not as authoritative where he talks about some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. I actually haven't read through those letters. I probably should. They're not considered on the same level of authority as the Mishnah Torah, obviously.
Yeah. Hezi's the one who turned me on to it.
Hezi, yeah. So Hezi,
in a very nice way, where I'm like, could you just disagree with me more? not to like a full Federecci, but like
Hezi has a his view ultimately is so different from mine in so many different ways. Sometimes I'm even surprised at the stuff he says, although by now I think I pretty much have him clear. But yeah, so I personally believe that Christianity and Islam need, if Islam did not exist, Christianity would have a much stronger claim to being what it claims to be. If Christianity didn't exist, Islam would have a much stronger claim. And I believe it's precisely these two diametrically opposed mistakes which show that Judaism is what is true and what the light by which you can be guided, because Islam and Christianity do exist. Like when I think when somebody was living under the Roman Catholic Church, and as far as they knew, the entire world belonged to, had been conquered by the Catholic Church, it made a lot more sense for them to say, right, yeah, Jesus is the Messiah, obviously.
Right.
I think when Islam rose, and now that we live in such a fractured world, it becomes Christians have to have a different narrative, because they can no longer be as preterist as I think a lot of Christians are. I think most Christians are more preterist than the doctrine actually even allows, which is why I've been talking about preterism so much.
Can I ask what you mean when you're trying to bring that forward? What do you mean by preterism?
Well, the verse I go to most is and the knowledge of God will cover the earth as the
The waters covered the seas.
right? Although, funny enough, I mean, those are two different verses kind of spliced together. But this idea that actually Jeremiah might be the best place, right? That a new covenant will be cut, and no man will teach another man to know God, because everyone from the least to the greatest will know, right? I think, you know, you have to be a full preterist to say, like, anytime someone says that to me, my question is, then why are we having this discussion, right? Since we are having this discussion, obviously the prophecy of Jeremiah has not been fulfilled, and the new covenant has not been made.
Do you, to any extent, accept the idea that that the God of Israel, well, like, there's nothing before Jesus. You can say, okay, Islam kind of messes with that a little bit or whatever, but that there isn't anything before Jesus that spreads the God of, especially Deuteronomy. Like, I would actually even say that, because a lot of those passages are specifically speaking of knowledge of the law. That is how Deuteronomy gets in the hands of the nations. The nations are, and I mean, if you go to Israel, the people who are flocking there, what number of them, of the goys, are there because they heard the beach is nice, and what percentage are going there specifically to make pilgrimage because of the God of Israel and what he did through Jesus?
Well, I think the religious tourism is far larger than the beach tourism.
Right.
But I mean, I do believe
the people that were killing their elderly at 72 changed and started making pilgrimage to Israel.
Right. No.
That seems like a bit of a fulfillment of that. Just a little bit.
No, so this I have to say quite clearly. I would not say in any way that it is in some ways, Christianity was created by God, right? Does that mean that it is the purest expression that is available to people today? To some people, yes. But to the people who are coming to my channel, which I admit, I mean, let's face it, 100 years ago, if you were a Christian and you read your Bible and you became convinced of all of the things that I would tell you today, if you go to it, if you wanted to speak to a rabbi, you wouldn't. There was nobody available, right? And so I believe we are approaching a time when Christianity and Islam are in fact going to yield their fruit, which is Christians will be known not as through a glass darkly, but clearly by becoming Noahides. And I think that's happening. And that's a process which was cultivated yes, definitely through Christianity over the past 2,000 years, and Islam over the past 1,500 years, right? That yeah, we're trying very hard to ignore you guys, but like, you guys are being silly.
They are doing a good job at attracting attention. I would say, though, that it doesn't say that they like that there is something within this, and I wonder to what extent this is also why you feel pretty comfortable with me leading a Bible study. Is that to me here, it says that Christians, like the nations, are going to come and keep the Feast of Booths. Like to me, what's interesting here is that they don't come and join themselves to the nation of Israel and become Israelites or become Jews.
Well,
they
yeah, I mean,
maintain themselves as the nations.
Would I be as comfortable if you believed that, if you were, let's say you were a fully supersessionist?
Okay.
Would I let a fully supersessionist David still lead the Bible study? I think I would. Although I have to say, I just find somebody who's a full supersessionist to be so ignorant of even the Christian Bible. Wow.
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I want to say goodnight to my wife. I'm putting you on mute.
We finally got to see your wife.
Yeah, you finally got to see my. Do you want to say hi for a second? What? This is my wife. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh, she can't hear you because of the here.
Hello.
Hey,
Very
Jacob.
nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you for sharing your husband with us.
Yeah. Okay, let me. I'm gonna say goodnight. Not to you.
Okay, go away. I took you off. Go away. You can come back. Okay. So let me see if I can see what's going on in this chat while this is happening. As a ger in a loosely Jewish tent, I am satisfied. I actually did a video on Matthew's little recent video last night. Gage, we really should probably talk about Fountain of Comfort as well. I should be doing stuff. You're back. There you are.
I'm back. Ha.
Yeah, my problem with full supersessionists, like, is it's just so biblically illiterate. I would have difficulty respecting you if you held that position.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I respect you enough, not because of any particular position you hold, but because you seem to know your scriptures well, right? And I say the same thing about Jason, right? If somebody knows their scripture well, I am fine with that person leading a Bible study on my channel.
Okay.
Despite what I might disagree with them, that's what we were kind of getting at the very beginning. Is I'm not sure there is a position. If there is a position that you could hold that would make me be like, no, that I can't let this guy lead a Bible study, I don't know what that position is. Because, I mean, I have a Trinitarian, doing a Bible study, and I have a Zionist, Chezi, doing classes.
And those are your two rules. Those are the two rules.
And that's what my two rules, that's why I have my two rules.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, if I am going to have this channel, right, in what respect is it limited to being my channel? Well, yeah, I am setting the topics we talk about, certainly.
Right.
Like, somebody wanted to do a Dante thing, and I was like, I'm sorry, I just don't see how that relates to my channel, right? Um, and
Mhm.
and when it came to allowing people to host who I knew believed things which are completely beyond anything I would ever affiliate my channel with, it was just a matter of, okay, I ask you that when you talk about such a topic, at least, make clear this is not something that Jacob, like, this is not Jacob's channel speaking.
No. And I honestly, if ever I bring you up and what your perspective is, it's funny. Kurt kind of cut me off because I think he thought just this past week, because I think he thought I was going to quote you in a way where other people quote someone and say, well, they say this, but they're an idiot. But I wasn't going to do that. We were going through a particular passage in First Samuel. And I wanted to mention, okay, this is what Jacob would do with this passage. I want to represent that is part of what your opinion is. And it's interesting because I think the things I'm most interested in talking about, generally speaking, are going to be directly related to Christianity. And you disagreed with me, or which to me includes Judaism, but as its foundations, and that Christianity is an outgrowth of Judaism. And I believe that. And I also believe, you were like, why Gilgamesh? I wanted to speak about Gilgamesh one time because I was just like, you know what? I want to actually talk about this. People just throw around Gilgamesh as it just shows that the Bible's not true. I don't buy that at all. So I wanted to actually talk about it. And
and I was fine with that because, like, it wasn't. I don't think it's. Well, I mean, I wouldn't have talked about Gilgamesh because finally, I just find it boring. I don't think it's
I like it.
But
like soon
is something completely different. So
if it was, I wonder how you'd feel about a one-off or something like that. Coming up, some people were like, "Are you going to do another one?" Because some people really like that one, and I'm hoping to do one on Macbeth. But specifically from a Christian perspective. I think you'll really like it. It kind of came up today, actually, while you were discussing things.
Macbeth.
Yeah, Macbeth. That Scottish play.
Yeah,
the shortest of all Shakespeare's plays. Which is clearly about how, if you turn away from God, that everything breaks down entirely. That's what the play's about.
I mean, you can. I am not going to say no,
but we'll utterly confuse you, and you'll just be like, "Why?"
It's like, okay, well, the thing is, I mean, certainly what always happens on my streams is somebody comes on, we're talking, we go off on wild tangents that have nothing to do with anything, and we're talking, right? As far as, like, if you made a video about Macbeth and you were like, "Hey, Jacob, do you want to broadcast this?" I would be like, "No." But, like, you're doing the Bible study and you seem to think it's relevant, and I'm not going to stop you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty. I must say, I'm about as like nice of a guy as you can get.
Yeah. I've talked to a lot of people. Maybe this is a good thing for us to talk about for a little bit too, is that I think that the wrestling is actually, you picked your name, right? Because you actually have,
in a sense. So yeah, I have a Persian name, Behzad, which a lot of people call me by, which I don't actually like very much. And when we came to the United States, so my Hebrew name has always been Yaakov. And I've always identified with that more.
Yeah.
And it's funny, when I came to the United States for years, my teachers resisted. Like, I had a teacher in 5th and 6th grade who when I tried telling people to call me Jacob, she was like, "No, you should be proud. Make people." And she kind of forced me into like using Behzad for those 2 years. And then after that, I started using Jacob in school, and then when I became a citizen, I officially took it on as my alias, and then I started using it everywhere. And like I use Jacob Behzad Fadarachi. It's still my middle name.
Okay.
I have not introduced myself as Behzad to anybody other than maybe somebody I was trying to clearly like be like, hey, I'm Persian, type thing. So yeah, I mean, I chose to go by my Hebrew name, Jacob. But yeah, I mean, well, also I have to say, I mean, your understanding of Yaakov, the name Yaakov, like is much more like you seem to think of that name um as struggling a lot more than and wrestling a lot more than I do, whereas I think actually the name Israel is more the struggling name. And I mean there's different ways of putting it, but like when I think of Yaakov, I think Ekev Tishma'un, and Parshat Ekev. I don't think of many of the stories that are integrally related to Jacob himself in a lot of places. And yeah, so I think the symbolic, you view it very differently than I do, I think, of the name Jacob.
I think part of the Jacob story is a retelling of the story of humanity as well.
What do you mean?
Well, so within the story, how deep in do I go with this? Esau's nickname is Adam.
In a sense.
In a sense, after he's tempted with food, for this reason they call it.
Yeah. Edom, yeah, right? Yeah.
Right. And the story where in order for Jacob, the smooth one, who's going to now deceive someone whose eyes are hidden, whose eyes are closed, he looks like Adam after he puts on the skins. And even like, I know the word is different, but the notion of the serpent was more subtle. Like the word could be translated as, I think it was, what's his name? Who's the
James Tabor?
No. The Tovia Singer. Tovia Singer said his interpretation is that the word for subtle was actually derives from like being naked. Is the most naked. Yeah. It was the most naked of all the beasts of the field. And that there's something about that, the relationship of nudity and the snake. And to me, it's also like a snake is smooth. The subtleness, the nakedness of the snake, it's not like, we still use that expression, a person's smooth, right? And that Jacob is a smooth man. And that him being smooth is not just that he is like yourself when you buzz your head. Obviously, that's the reason you do it, because you are a smooth man.
Yeah, very much so. So do you have similar thoughts about the name David?
So it's not, I'm David Jonathan.
Okay.
This is the other thing, is that my parents, on my wall, because again, I grew up Catholic, when I was in like grade too. When I did First Communion, my parents gave me this, and it's on my wall right now.
David, beloved one, the beloved of the Lord shall dwell in safety by him, and the Lord shall cover him all the day long.
that's
Hold
from-
on. What verse is that supposed to be? Deuteronomy 33:12? Deuteronomy 30 was 33:12?
Yes. Who is there? And do they they appear to have the cough?
Yes, that's Andrew, and he's allergic to my cat, which makes it kind of hard for him to be couch surfing in for the past. How many years have you been here? Yeah. But here we are. Okay, Levinyamin Amar Yedid Hashem Yishkon Levetach. So they're translating David as Yedid.
It does come from the origin meaning beloved.
I mean, yeah. I think the name David comes from the 2-letter root dad, meaning nipple.
Say more so that I can.
Well, I mean, so like a beloved as an embrace,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And a motherly embrace, right? I think Yedid, David, that 2-letter root originally was associated with the breast, right?
Right.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken,
A dod is an uncle.
okay. Unless I'm mistaken, the is it El Shaddai also has a connotation of motherly,
Yeah,
like breasted,
yeah.
large breasted.
Yeah, so right. So yeah, there is, and yeah, I think that might be related. Yeah. But yeah, the 2-letter roots, dalid, right? Dad, is always, I mean, a dad, it literally means nipple. But
Right.
yeah, is always associated somehow with that like type of motherly love. And I think that's where the name David comes from. I think that's where Yedid comes from. Right. I think there are different versions of it. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, so that verse was kind of so to what extent the David Jonathan thing I've contemplated a lot because I dealt a lot with loneliness when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I would make a joke of it. It's in the Bible, David and Jonathan, it says that they were so close that they were like one man, and I am like one man.
There you go. Yeah.
But for me, the verse, because I think I kind of went a little crazy when I was younger, and the result of pushing away from my faith that I grew up with was nihilism and not becoming a particularly nice person. So one of the verses that stuck out to me was, "I will call him beloved, who is not beloved." That idea of being like, my parents didn't give me the name for meaning.
He is coughing up a lung. Yes.
So part of how my parents thought of it is like, my brother is named after people. So he has my father's name as his middle name, and he's named after people. And I have cousins named after people. And then I was like, and how did you guys pick my name? And my parents said, we just thought it sounded nice.
So,
As far as it goes.
so this morning, Yosef had his baby boy circumcised
Brit,
and
yeah.
named. Yeah. So
I sent them a
So-
congratulations. Yeah.
We've been discussing the name. They went with Ranen David. Yeah. So there you
I'm
go.
honored. I'm so honored.
Yeah, I you yeah, I mean it's his step grandfather was named David, and that's why, but yeah. I'm sure you were part of it too.
I do. I think I want to honor the name.
mm.
You could pick someone far worse to be trying to honor.
Well, I mean, yeah. If you see David, that's the thing. It's like one of the most popular questions I get from Christians who are in any way familiar with
The rabbinic material. It's the David didn't sin.
yeah. Well, it doesn't say David didn't sin. It says anyone who says David sinned is mistaken.
Right.
Has nothing but it in his hands but mistakes, literally.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we going with this conversation, Mr. Conversation Leader?
Oh, I suppose it's me leading. Yeah. What do you think about Noahides participating in Passover? Because
So
it specifically says in the law that you need to be circumcised to participate.
to eat of the Passover offering, and that's definitely so. This is a big question within the Noahide movement that
Yeah.
rabbis are still debating, and they've only started debating. So I can't even really say that there is any sort of consensus truly. What is absolutely clear is a Noahide is not allowed to invent any sort of religious practice. There are some practices which they shouldn't do. For example, Sabbath observance. Although Rabbi Shirky seems to believe differently about that as well. And I have not been able to get a good answer out of Chezi other than sending me a video where he says Rabbi Shirky explains, and I wasn't able to find the explanation Chezi says is there. I still don't know his thinking or understand what he's thinking. But we do mitzvot because God commanded them, right?
Yeah.
And a Noahide should do any religious practice because God commanded him or not, right? If God commanded me not to eat pork, right, and didn't command you not to eat pork, right, then who are you to decide that you should not eat pork, right? If God wanted that, he would have said it, right?
Mhm.
So, in regards to like going to a Passover Seder, there certainly is no religious obligation to do that. And anyone who tries to say that there is a religious obligation for a Gentile to do that, Orthodox Judaism would certainly disagree with.
Mhm.
If a Gentile wants to go, has a Jewish friend, and his Jewish friend wants, and wants to go to the house of the Jewish friend, etc., right? Then I'm guessing almost everybody would say that's not a problem. The question is, why are you going? Are you going? Are you going because you believe you have some sort of obligation religiously? And this is where a lot of times the Paul within Judaism people will be like, oh, like, yeah, that's what Paul, that, and that's what you were saying earlier. In terms of somebody who is not Jewish himself having a Seder, I would say most rabbis would say that's inappropriate, and I would be hard pressed to give a good reason why a Gentile would do that would not, in some ways, be opposed to the way we see things theologically, right? Because it's not for you, right? God didn't command it of you.
Mhm.
And obviously, most Christians would want to do something like that because they believe Jesus instituted it, and the Eucharist and all that. Which, like, yeah, we don't believe any of that, right? However, there is a different way of looking at it, which Chezi would be much more into, and I think may be Rabbi Shirky's way of looking at it, which is somebody who grew up Christian, right? They grew up Christian. They're not creating their own religion. This is the religion that has been handed down to them over the generations. They're observing that and trying to understand it better, right? Chazi would say, I would tend to agree with, and I have not heard rabbis I respect seriously contending with the idea that it's perfectly appropriate for somebody in that situation to try to learn more about the Jewish root of that which in some corrupted way is a remnant, right? So it really does end up being a question of intent, because Orthodox Judaism has always been very adamant about, and funny enough, I think that's the real discussion in Acts and the letters of Paul, which a lot of Christians don't have context to understand and didn't until recently, which is, we don't believe it's appropriate. It's okay. I I have to say this. I believe the authors of the Gospels very much did believe that Christians that there was a ripping of the veil. There was no more, like, Christians were not Jewish, and I do believe there was, like, by the time of the writing of the Gospels, but I believe that that's after Paul,
Mhm.
right? And historically, I mean, it is after Paul, but a lot of Christians would find that very weird to say, which is I believe Paul still was maintaining the distinction between Jew and Gentile, whereas I think the writers of the Gospels were not. I think they were trying to basically get rid of this idea that there were that Jews have God demands different things from Jews than he demands of Gentiles. Because they just found that idea repugnant. And so I think whenever it's possible to read Paul as saying that before Jesus, God didn't care about the Gentiles. I think a lot of Christians do read it that way.
Right.
They had no relationship. Like the God of Israel was not the God of Gentiles. Jesus came so that Gentiles could have access to the God of Israel. I don't think even Paul was dumb enough to believe that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is like, okay, we believe in one God. That God was the God of the Gentiles since the beginning.
Sorry. So do you believe that Luke is representing Paul's beliefs correctly in Acts?
I believe Luke. I believe Luke is no. I don't think he's representing Paul correctly. I think Luke is trying to reconcile Jewish Christians. So I do believe in the theories of James Tabor in terms of the Jesus dynasty and Robert Eisenman, a lot of what he says in terms of James, the brother of Jesus. I believe that after Jesus died, James became the leader of the Jewish Christian community.
Yeah.
I think Paul came along, created a different tried to create a different Jewish Christian community, but the Jews rejected Paul. And Paul ended up creating a Gentile Christian community, which was separate. I believe the Gospels come out of that. I guess I would have to exclude Luke from that. I never really thought about it that way, but in this way, I'm actually dating Luke after John, or maybe separate from John. Maybe Luke was before John, and John decided to take the more Gentile view. Maybe that makes sense. Or John was reworked after Luke. I could believe that, because I do think John was reworked. It seems pretty obvious to me that John was reworked. Okay. But I think Acts certainly, and I guess Luke would go along with that.
Can I ask you what your favorite gospel is? Like, as far as the one that you think has the most good stuff in it?
Gospel of Thomas.
Okay.
I think the Gospel of Thomas, except for the very last saying, is the most authentic and earliest gospel. Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask about the four gospels? Which one you like most?
I mean, like is a difficult thing.
Which one you think has the most good stuff in it?
I think John has Jewish material that was not broadly available, which was reworked. I believe the Gospel of John has been most corrupted from what I believe was the original writing of it. between the synoptics, I would probably say Matthew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, yeah, kind of, but like Mark, I mean, I cannot forgive Mark for that parenthetical of in so saying he made all things
Everything's clean. Yeah.
clean. That to me is a I mean, apparently William Branch thinks Mark was also reworked. I don't know. I think it's quite likely that Thomas is Q.
But
It is.
no, it can't be Q. It's not Q. Because Q specifically for I don't buy the order in which modern scholars put things in. I don't think there's any reason to. Because
Yeah.
Mark could just as easily, like, there's no reason why it couldn't be Matthew, Mark, Luke, then John written. Because the material, the whole point of Thomas being Q is the idea that there is material that's the same between Matthew and Luke, which is not in Mark. But that material is not in Thomas. That's where Q document comes from.
Yeah.
Q is the idea because some people took the word for word Greek phrases that are similar in the Gospels. And then a theory came out that Mark was the first, and then one copies the other, and then Luke copies Mark, but sometimes he has stories from Matthew, not exactly in Matthew's words. So they say, okay, there's another document that we don't have.
So
that's why I mean, on a technical level, if we are talking about the same Q, it can't be Q.
So let me talk about the documentary hypothesis for a minute. When I first started my religious track, one of the first papers I ever wrote in college was my final for my ancient history class, in which I wrote Deuteronomy was written by a scribe because I just went to the library and whatever was in the documentary stuff, I believed it, right? As I learned more Hebrew, as I learned more about Talmudics and stuff, I became more and more dismissive of the documentary hypothesis because I just don't understand how anybody bothers with the documentary hypothesis at all.
My Hebrew professor referred to it as vegetable soup. As alphabet soup. Alphabet soup.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look, I see a pattern.
Yeah. It's
the dumb idiot. And honestly, the literary analysis of something like the flood story and how complex it is, the idea that it's just thrown together willy-nilly and the number of mistakes they think that people just aren't even paying attention to as they sew these passages together. I'm just like, please.
Until you get to the synoptics. And then you have to deal with the synoptics. And I don't see how you deal with the synoptic gospels without starting on the road. Like, I didn't even know where people started thinking the documentary hypothesis was a thing, and textual analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And, when Bart Ehrman and a lot of people will say, oh, the Old Testament is even worse in terms of textual analysis, I don't think they understand what exactly we mean by, okay, you're looking at the synoptics and you're trying to understand what actually happened there, right?
Right.
It's and you end up having to use textual analysis and things like the documentary hypothesis, similar to, if not exactly, right, in order to try to understand, okay, what actually happened. And ultimately, I have to say, I kind of came to the conclusion, I think there were multiple Jesuses. I think there there was a couple of main Jesuses, and I think
the plural is
stories.
Jesus.
Jesus, yeah. And yeah, like things ended up getting confused from the various Jesus, right? And you end up with the various gospels. What do you think of Shem Tov's Matthew?
I think that the biggest selling point for me is the Hebrew word puns.
Okay.
If people don't know what I'm talking about, so in Hebrew, one of the more famous ones would be something like.
Have you actually read that book? Because I never got it.
I just went through little bits of it. It just did. I don't see any evidence for it being old enough. That's the thing, is it's just like, how far back can you find the document? If we're,
I mean, why would you have that? Why does that even matter? I don't understand why people think just because.
Jacob? Am I still here? They got him? Jacob is restarting his computer. Cassandra, I don't think they got him, because the people who say they generally mean the Jews. So how's that for a joke? Or the people who got into specifically this version of Matthew. I think he's talking about the same thing. Every argument Jacob can Jacob used can be used against him, but never is, because Jacob will redirect. Yeah, it is kind of impressive. The other they, the lizard people. I wonder which they is Cassandra's favorite they. Yeah, that's silly is what makes her cool. Silly is very cool. Yeah. Look, we're gonna have her back in a second, so maybe I'll establish a couple of things. And Jacob can disagree with me or not. The documentary hypothesis is not nothing. That's the thing to know. It's not nothing. And there are disagreements between something like Kings and Chronicles. There will be differences in how things are described in those books. And you can do work to try to harmonize them, absolutely. But there is real work which needs to be done. And, if you lead someone who has never read the Bible before through the Bible. Oh, Jacob, thank you. You're back.
I am back.
If you're just reading Genesis, if you have people and they've never read Genesis before, and it's the first time they've ever read Genesis, they will not understand it, and they will immediately come up with the documentary hypothesis.
You think so?
Yeah, I've done it. That even the rabbinic material is like, yep, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 is the creation of two different things.
Well, that doesn't create.
Yeah, that's not. See, David, that's not a problem. That there's two different creation stories. That's not a problem. And that, like, okay, at the end of a story that they summarize it, sometimes in a different form of Hebrew. That's not a problem. like there are signs of older Hebrew, of things being sewn together. I'm not saying that's, and there are contradictions between Samuel and not Samuel, between Kings and Chronicles, right?
Well, Kings and Chronicles, yeah, that definitely,
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is that, okay, good. Then I, as long as I have you saying that, I do think that there's issues, without a doubt, in harmonizing the four Gospels, and even some of the earliest writings that we have.
The two
What?
versions of the Ten Commandments.
Commandments as well. Sometimes it's very important things. They go, wait, who's responsible for this? Even Deuteronomy and Exodus, like as far as some of the retellings of some of the stories, and even that's the same. I do think it is the same primary author, but there do become questions about how the text is written.
Yeah.
Anytime you freeze now, I think that you're gone.
No, I actually think, I am hoping that the restarting has
okay.
materially changed the situation, because I think my system may have been crashing and I haven't restarted in a while. So
you know the video, the bit where I make the joke about you on Chad's news thing?
Yeah.
I didn't realize for a couple of seconds that was a video of you, where he zooms in on, because you're like staring, and it just like your eyes start moving, and I didn't, like, the first time he sent it to me, it took a while for me to know that it was a video and not just a picture of you.
Okay, I don't recall the video. That
you are less ADD than me. I move. I got a lot of Italian in me. As soon as I stop talking, I start drinking. So you're never worried that I'm frozen. You are still. You have a patience.
Well, I think part of the problem may be my glasses and the fact that you don't see my eyes moving.
Yeah, I can't see you blinking.
Yeah, because of the way the light is right now.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But yeah,
better.
Yeah.
So back to Shem Tov's Matthew.
Yes. It has word puns, which makes it seem like he may have real Hebrew documents, which indicate word plays that are only occurring in the Hebrew, not in the Greek as the New Testament, as we have received it, as the earliest documents we've received have.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But it's one of those things where, so for people who don't know, before the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, one of the reasons why they're so important is that the newest copy of the entirety of the Old Testament,
the oldest copy, was about 1,000 years old.
Right. And so as a result, people said that the Septuagint was more reliable. Like that people said, look, we don't know what it says.
Yeah, I honestly don't understand that frame of thought. Like, if the oldest copy of Crime and Punishment I have is an English copy from the 1980s,
right.
Does that mean I should believe that it wasn't written in 18 whatever by in Russian? Like, what? Yeah.
Right. But it comes from a school of thinking, which is take absolutely nothing as true and doubt everything. And I do think that, like, the earliest documents we have is that there are four Gospels, and that it is the four which we have. It's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We have references within the 2nd century of Mark was Peter's secretary, and he didn't care about chronology, but it's still pretty good. Like, it actually even says at that point he didn't care about the order.
What do you think of Thomas?
I have to revisit Thomas because I don't know to what extent there's things that are disagreeable besides the end comments, as you said.
Going through it, it just seemed like far older and more authentic to me than any of the other gospels. Until I got to the last one. The last one was just bizarre.
I think that some of it sound like some streams of Gnostic Judaism that I've heard, but I don't know to what extent. It just didn't seem Jewish enough to me.
No, actually, I went. I mean, I don't remember it exactly, but it seems
Like
more Jewish to me than
the end of Judges, and I mean all throughout First and Second Samuel. Like we're in First Samuel right now, so it's in my mind. People are doing work to have stories mirror stories in Judges, in Genesis, in Deuteronomy, in throughout the Torah. Stories are being used again as the outline for how things function, and I see that in the biblical, in the Christian canon. I see that work being done. Whereas I get that there's sayings, but I just don't see anything occurring that I'm like, that is definitely Jewish and could not occur.
I didn't even think of that going through it. The Gospel of Thomas reminded me very much of like Pirkei Avot.
Okay.
And like it's not like in Pirkei Avot, like it's like a midrash where they say, "Oh, following verse, what does this mean?" Or
right.
That
but
type
it's just wisdom on its own.
It is wisdom on its own, but it's kind of like it's a fundamentally different type of
literature.
Literature, which is kind of like, oh, what did your rabbi teach? This is what my rabbi taught.
Well, like if you take the Sermon on the Mount as an example, I think the Sermon on the Mount is excellent rabbinic material that also mirrors other biblical stories the way that Scripture does, the way that Old Testament Scripture does, the way that it will like use other passages even when it's not quoting them to make its meaning deeper and to see and to show what its interpretation is. To me, you get that in the four Gospels that you don't in Thomas. It's interesting because I didn't read Thomas thinking of like the wisdom of the fathers or any of that stuff. I was only thinking of it in terms of Hebrew Bible.
So when I read anything about Jesus, my first thought is, do I believe this is historically credible and accurate? Especially like I tried to go through all the supposed mentions of Jesus in the Talmud, right? And the only one that I found that seemed to me to be representing itself as, here, I am telling you something that happened to this guy, Jesus, was the story with Rabbi Yeshua ben Parachia and pushing him away with two hands. You know the story?
No. What's this one?
The story. So they're actually, I believe, if I remember correctly, darshaning the verse in Song of Songs that says, with his right hand, with his left hand he held me, and with his right he comforted me, something like that, right? And they come up with this this rule, which is you always push with the left and draw close with the right. You never push someone away with two hands. And they ask, well, what's an example of pushing away with two hands? and they tell this story of Rabbi Yoshua ben Parachia, um, who was traveling with his student Jesus of Nazareth, who and they walked past an inn, and he says, look at the eyes of that innkeeper, they're weird. Female innkeeper, which, if you know Hebrew, you know innkeeper and prostitute are similar words. And Rabbi Yoshua reprimanded him too harshly, right? It was like, oh, you cannot be a student if this is the type of thoughts you have. And it tells stories of Jesus trying to come back and approach him over and over again. And Rabbi Yeshua was finally going to go ahead and accept him as a student. And Jesus came just as he was saying Shema, so he couldn't. And Jesus leaves and becomes an idolater, right? And that's the only story that really struck me as this doesn't look like a story that, like, in a lot of the Talmudic stuff, they seem to be discussing a story that is known, I'm guessing, from Christians.
Right.
This doesn't appear to be a story like that, right? Where they're discussing what Christians or other people may be saying about what Jesus did, but it sounds like it was, the the word there is precisely that. Yeah. I have no idea what William is asking. But
It's
yeah.
because of this. It's eventually the power does go out, thankfully. Praise. So it's who will reboot you then.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so a lot of times when I'm reading material about Jesus, my first question is the author of this trying to present this as this is information I have about Jesus? Or are they taking information that I'm guessing was running around and trying to use it to explain things? Right? And it seems to me the Gospel of Thomas was much more, these are just stories we have of this teacher, Jesus, where it's all of the four canonical Gospels seem to be somebody trying to contextualize and give a narrative to things people already knew about Jesus. And frankly, I think much of the letters of Paul, I don't think Paul knew much about Jesus at all. He knew that some guy named Jesus died, and he decided he's going to make up stories about that.
And do you think he was a Merkava mystic?
I think he was some sort of mystic. I doubt he was a Jewish mystic. His theology is just so repugnant in so many ways.
Okay.
He does not seem so. I've had this discussion with Chazi and Yosef. When you look at what Jesus says, you can tell that this is somebody who has been initiated into Talmudic thinking and may have various views in terms of his own way of looking at those things, whereas Paul just appears not to be even aware. Like there's a difference between being conversant in a conversation, maybe having a different view of it, as opposed to just being so out of left field that it's like, oh, you must not have engaged with this discussion at all. And that's why I have my doubts Paul was Jewish at all.
Okay.
I certainly don't believe he was a student of Gamliel.
Okay.
I mean, it makes zero sense to me that in Acts 5, Gamliel says, hey, leave these Christians alone. And in Acts 8, is it? Or even 7, Paul shows up killing Christians. Like, what are you talking about? How is this man a student of Gamliel?
Why would the text make the claim? Because Luke would have been written after Paul.
Okay.
Why wouldn't it?
You get into Robert Eisenman territory.
If it's inventing a Paul that's better, why doesn't it harmonize better?
So now you're getting into Robert Eisenman's main thing, which is he thinks that the author of Acts was taking an anti-Paul screed and rewriting it. And he actually believes, I forget what the name of the document is, that appears, most scholars will say, it's a much later rewrite of Acts. He believes is the original that Acts rewrote.
Okay.
There's something that claims to be like the letters of Peter back to James or something.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know this all that well.
Yeah, I mean, it's very unfortunate that Robert Eisenman is such a bad communicator. His lectures are rambling. A lot of the things he says, which actually he might, I mean, I don't know if it might even be deliberate, because he has been so influential. Like, it is very clear that Robert Eisenman's theories have been influential within academia in ways that I think if he had clearly set them out, people would have just rejected them out of hand. But he's rambly enough that it's not clear, and he makes a lot of claims that he never caches. And if it was a shorter work than the 1,000 pages of James, the brother of Jesus, it would be obvious that he never cashes the checks he writes. The influence into mainstream work has been absolutely clear within the past 20 years. It's funny because Eisenman was really big into like postmodernism. And so as personally as himself, so it's not actually crazy to think that he might be deliberately rambly in order to force people to contend with his ideas in ways that a clear presentation wouldn't achieve.
Okay.
Of course, he also operates with an extreme hermeneutics of suspicion that is just beyond, like,
Right.
he literally says he thinks the authors of, he thinks Acts is the way it is because the person who was writing it was laughing at the people he was writing it for and was cynically just making fun of them by making really outlandish claims and weird, like, it,
That
take hermeneutics of suspicion
yeah.
and ramp it up to 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm getting a little bit tired.
Okay.
I'm
losing my voice.
I have enjoyed this conversation, and I think I hope my perspective is a little bit more clear. I think that eventually we will all, as I think you can see what passages I was focusing on and bringing forward, that it isn't a matter of whether or not I think Gentiles should celebrate tabernacles. They will. The Hebrew Bible.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, I have to say, I think the question that you're going to have to ponder and answer for yourself is, who is a Jew?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. And I think that I do think that one of the evidences of a passage of scripture that you've quoted repeatedly is that through Jesus of Nazareth, like, Gentiles have flocked and protected. I know I got to own all the anti-Semitism too. That's fine. I'm sorry. Real sorry, buddy.
The suffering servant, Hine Avdi.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yes. Yes. And that is actually part of how I understand things as well. I hope you could understand that, is that I do think that there's something. I think Jesus is the unique Son of God the way that Isaac is. Because Isaac is described as your son, your only one. Wait. What about Esau? Sorry, what about Ishmael? Right.
You're right. And
I think that Jesus is the one who, the blood of the sacrifice is applied to the corners of the altar. And then, because of that part of Yom Kippur, the rest of the sacrifices are able to be made. And so I believe that the sacrifices of Messiah ben Joseph, that we are that we might become partakers of that we participate in that sacrifice, that through his sacrifice, other sacrifices are able to be made.
I hear you.
And Christians will only understand what the hell I just said if they spend some time studying Yom Kippur. And they might have to practice it in order to have any idea what I just said and what the author of Hebrews and Revelation understood. I know you hate it. It's fun.
No, it's I actually don't hate it nearly as much as you seem to think I do. And I'm not sure I hate it at all.
Hebrews, the theological crime scene.
That theological crime scene? I mean, it's a theological crime scene. Can you hate a theological crime scene? I actually would be interested if you were to jump on when Father Stephen makes an appearance.
Yeah, I honestly, I feel like I need to have a conversation with him, because I did feel that because I get the Hebrew
Well,
roots
he wasn't
people.
talking about you specifically.
No, I know he wasn't.
Yeah.
I know he wasn't.
I would be interested in seeing what his responses to the things you said were.
Yeah, I'm super interested too. That's why I said, can I have a conversation with him? 'Cause I don't get this.
I have been trying very hard. So Yosef Chazi and so we have supposedly been planning on for months now to try to. Father Stephen was going to explain Romans 7 to Chazi, Yosef, and me, and try to defend the idea that Paul wasn't just blabbering stupidity.
Okay.
And we've been trying to do that for months, but Father Stephen has sometimes when he has time.
Yeah.
When he has time, sometimes he jumps on.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be pretty late for you. I might text you the next time. I mean, if he jumps on, I'll try to remember to text you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Because I think it could be very fruitful, and I honestly want to understand the Orthodox position on some of it, because some of the bits are utterly confusing to me. Because, and I kind of mentioned this. Who was I talking to? First interaction I had with Pete of Strange Theology was actually on Christian Baxter's channel, and
Okay.
I told Christian and Pete through that channel that, to me, communion taking over Passover would be if for Thanksgiving you had a cranberry and a crouton to resemble stuffing. You'd just be like, this is not Thanksgiving, guys.
Yeah, I and frankly, I say that to Father Stephen about his like communion, because
and you're like, but eating the cranberry, that fulfills Thanksgiving.
Well,
like,
okay, so when I went to the Lords of Spirits conference, I actually made Kiddush for Father Stephen, and I hope I impressed on everyone who had Kiddush with us that while there was bread and wine, the handle of vodka I brought with me was far more important for the actual meal that we had together, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing I will say, which I think you may find surprising if you haven't heard me say before, is I think you may actually find that for 95% of your exploration, Father Stephen's already been there.
I have to tell you, because I know I made a joke about Father Stephen when we were just talking on the phone. I like him a lot. I listen to his podcast.
Have you read his books?
I have not read his books.
You should read his books, especially Religion of the Apostles. While I disagree with a lot of the stuff he says,
right,
I think I don't. I mean, it seems to me like he's tried to do a project very much like the project you've tried to do.
Yes.
Except he's standing on the shoulders of giants, and you're trying to build a church, and he's sitting in a cathedral.
I have a question for you, though.
Yeah.
If you were an Orthodox Christian, and you began to understand Passover more deeply, what would you do? Like, because to me, it's just like, I feel comfortable being under people's authority and all this other stuff, but like, it seems like we're clearly missing something, and I don't know how we get it by only participating in communion the way that they describe it.
Have you ever actually been to an Eastern Orthodox?
Yeah.
church?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've been there. And I like my theory is that the Sabbath Kiddush, like the breaking of bread and the blessing on the bread and the wine, that the Catholics are more interested in the Passover, like that there's a connection between these two things, and that essentially, because the Christians don't know enough Jews, they blend those things, and the Catholics get a little more blending of one, and the Orthodox a little more of the other. So that to me is why it's leavened bread.
I mean, ultimately, yeah, I find all of Christianity to be a pale shadow of Judaism. I just do. But if I were to be a Christian, I would be an Eastern Orthodox Christian.
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it just because they have a priesthood and you
It's
appreciate
not
the
that. No.
continued
I mean,
higher?
number one reason is the monarchical Trinity.
Okay.
Let's just start with the filioque. Like the filioque. Like
yeah.
yeah. What once
The West
you've lost everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But I do think the filioque just permeates through the rest of Protestant Christian, and like if I were to be a Western Christian, it would definitely be a Catholic, right? Or at least an Anglican.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like Martin Luther and John Calvin were just horrible people.
Yeah. I find a lot of it very difficult myself for understanding, because I think that the theology
I
of
remember your thing with call no man father.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think that's causing you to trip.
It's that, so I think that the Western Church in multiple ways is very clearly in error. And I mean, Father Stephen, even when one of the very brief conversations I had with him, was saying that Rome was, and like this part, I don't know if he mentioned, but is specified that Rome was seen as the first among brothers, or first among equals is sometimes the language that's used, among the five patriarchs. That's a very interesting image, because it seems like a pattern that the West is first. They are the ones that deserve to be in authority, but are also the ones who are in error.
Well, I mean, this is how I view the entirety of Christianity. It makes sense to me that, because I think Christianity has things upside down. And I think Nahapahu, right? There will be a hafecha, there will be a overturning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in Jonah, right? Nineveh Rome will be turned over.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah. Okay.
Do you want to open it up for 15 to 20 minutes?
We can. I'm losing my voice though.
Okay.
I have time. I was like, I expected this possibly to go way too long. So I can go. I'm just losing my voice. So you'll have to do more of the talking.
Okay. I've enjoyed the conversation. I'm going to allow people to jump in. If you guys got 20 minutes, or I'm going. Less than probably, for people to jump in the stream. This I do want to say. Soon, Jacob and I will have a conversation about porn bombing. I want
Oh
to,
yeah, we should do that, huh?
but not right now.
Okay.
And if Yanni is still watching, I would like Yon God to possibly join us.
Yon God, come on in.
Yeah, specifically for the porn bombing conversation. I saw. Did you witness it when it happened? When someone used his name to porn
No,
bomb?
I didn't witness that particular porn bombing.
It was fascinating,
yeah.
Jacob. It was fascinating because, I mean, I think your psychology. I think pulling some of your psychology credentials would be like, is it a fetish what they're doing? Think
there
think
is
about it to some extent
yeah.
because
No,
the
there is,
person, and we'll talk about it more, but the person pretending to be Yanni,
yeah.
it was driving a car and then looked down and
Okay, you have to be careful because of what's actually happening, right? You don't imagine that the person who
oh, I don't think it was Jan God at all.
no, not Yon God. The
Okay.
person who's actually doing it would never, ever, ever use any image that is actually of themselves.
Of themselves. Okay.
It's not exhibitionism. It's not exhibitionism that makes them do what they're doing.
Oh man, this is exactly why it's going to be a fascinating conversation. So I want you to think about this, stew in it, and then we'll have a conversation about what you think.
Emily, what it is not is flashing at all. A flasher, an exhibitionist, would get nothing out of this. An actual exhibitionist, like there's that there are ways they on the internet that is far more gratifying. What is happening with these porn bombers is they get excited at the reaction of disgust.
Yeah.
They're like, I owned you, I trolled you,
Yeah.
I infiltrated. Yeah.
And I definitely think that there's a male element of it I'd love to talk about.
Yeah,
okay.
all males would do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean that conversation we can have. I will say when I am being good, the procedure is when somebody comes on, and unless it's a verified account that I know it's a verified account, right?
Yeah.
That I have myself verified that this person is who it is. In the private chat, I will start asking them questions. And the first question I ask is, how did you find my channel? And somebody who, if it actually is somebody like Yon God, will say PDK, or something like that. Whereas these people will say, oh, it's a Bible study. I was looking for a Bible study, or
Right.
I'm a Christian too, or Jesus, something weird,
Yeah.
And then if I'm like, if they put their camera on, like you have to test them, because I even got to a point where I got somebody to go ahead and if they put their camera on, you ask them to do something like raise their right hand, right? Because that's not a looped video. They actually have to go ahead and raise their right hand, right?
Right.
But I actually had somebody with a mask who raised his right hand, and then when I let him on, he switched the videos.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'll be a fascinating conversation. Thank you, Jacob. I think we should have more conversations in the future. As you said, it's actually been a bit rare for us to have conversations.
Yeah.
I will bless you, and I think you should bless me.
Amen.
I pray that God continues to reveal himself to you
Amen.
and that you guide Christians closer and closer to the truth.
Amen.
May you be may you continue to be a beacon that sends people towards the Holy Land.
Towards the Holy Land. Yeah.
May we get closer and closer to that day where the Gentiles will celebrate booths.
To that day, I will agree. Yes. And you have already blessed my channel many times. I think anybody who, like you, is genuinely helping people understand the Bible better, which you are doing, and may you continue to do, is a blessing to have around, which is why I have you around.
Thank you. There. So as the human part of that wrestling match, we've both been blessed and also got to win. So that's good. All right. And the divine in us is what gave the blessing. So wonderful.
Amen.
Amen. Bye, Jacob.